This is the plane carrying Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, which has just landed in the last few minutes at Stansted Airport for a visit to the UK, only the second visit outside Ukraine since Russia's invasion almost a year ago. We have seen throughout the last 12 months strong political support from the UK, with visits by Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, and that political support, that very visible political support, then followed up by logistical support, and most significantly, just in the last few weeks, that confirmation from the United Kingdom that it would be sending Challenger tanks to Ukraine ahead of an expected spring offensive. President Zelensky, of course, has repeated over and over, hasn't he, that tanks are what Ukraine needs, not only to hold the ground it has, but to potentially retake ground from Russian forces and to try to push Russian forces out of Ukraine. So the UK announced recently that it would be sending Challenger tanks, and then that was followed by the Ramstein conference in Germany. We saw the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin there, and that led to pledges of further support in the form of tanks being sent by a number of countries, including significantly Germany and indeed the United States. The US, of course, was the first place outside Ukraine that President Zelensky visited since the Russian invasion, and now today just his second trip outside the country since that invasion. So we're waiting to see if we will get some pictures of President Zelensky emerging from the aircraft. I'm not sure if we're going to see those or not, but throughout the day we will see him arriving in Downing Street. We're told also just in the last few minutes that King Charles will hold an audience with Mr. Zelensky, and we're also expecting the Ukrainian president to make a speech to Parliament. Of course, for any trip beyond Ukraine, indeed within Ukraine, but certainly beyond Ukraine, a huge security lockdown around these trips until the last moment. So we just became aware within the last couple of hours that President Zelensky was on his way here. And I think we can return now to our political correspondent, Leila Nathu, who is in Downing Street. And Leila, just as we watch these images of the aircraft at Stansted Airport, hearing in the last few minutes that King Charles will also hold an audience with Mr. Zelensky, President Zelensky. But clearly the political significance of this visit is immense, just his second one outside Ukraine since the invasion by Russia.
I think that's absolutely a reflection of how important President Zelensky sees the UK as an ally. I mean, a meeting with the King, a meeting with Rishi Sunak, obviously, and an address to Parliament, I think is a reflection of just how significant this visit is. As you say, only his second foreign visit during the conflict, his first to the US, and making the UK his second destination, I think, will be very well received here by MPs and peers. Certainly, there is no sign from Rishi Sunak that there is any weakening or lessening of support that the UK intends to give Ukraine. Along with the visit today, you hear Rishi Sunak announcing, in fact, a stepping up of the support provided to Ukraine, an immediate boost to military equipment, and a commitment to start training pilots and Marines in the Ukrainian army. He has stopped short of committing to sending fighter jets as requested by President Zelensky. The US too is not doing that as yet. There are calls, including from former Prime Minister Boris Boris Johnson for the West to be more willing to provide aircraft to help Ukraine in its defences against Russia. But so far, that is not something the UK is willing to do. They say at the moment that it's not practical to provide those jets, but there is going to be training support given to Ukrainian pilots. But I think, there is no underestimating just how significant this visit is going to be today. It's a chance for Rishi Sunak to really associate himself with the support provided to Ukraine. He has visited Ukraine, but of course it's a conflict and an alliance that is most closely associated with his predecessor Boris Johnson, and to some extent his immediate predecessor Liz Truss, who was of course Foreign Secretary before she became Prime Minister. So I think today will be a chance for Rishi Sunak to connect again personally with President Zelensky, and a huge moment for him to be addressing Parliament too.
I think we don't know exactly yet how long this visit has been in the planning, but do you think the fact that it's happening is an indication of President Zelensky's acknowledgement that perhaps the UK decision to send Challenger tanks to Ukraine may have been a tipping point, if you like, in prompting other countries to decide to follow suit?
Well, I think the UK has always seen itself as leading the way in the international response to the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, and I think that the UK would like to think that it is providing leadership on the international stage, and I think that President Zelensky, his visit today does reflect that, and I think that is an acknowledgement, as I said, of the alliance between the UK and Ukraine. He has been repeatedly on the phone to Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, and before that his predecessors. There has been a regular communication between the UK and Ukraine on this, and I think that yes, there is a sense that the UK is providing leadership, and of course what the UK decides to do subsequently about the jets that President Zelensky has requested will be significant. But for the moment, that is not something the UK is doing, but stepping up training for fighter pilots and for Marines, as well as an immediate boost to military supplies.
And Leila, as we speak, we've just been seeing the motorcade carrying President Zelensky and his entourage leaving the aircraft, making its way towards central London. And also politically, of course, these images, just as when we saw President Zelensky in the United States as well, will have an impact in Russia.
Yeah, again, binding the UK to Russia and binding President Zelensky to the British government, very much a visual manifestation of those words that we have heard, that the UK stands shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. So a very symbolic image, I think, for President Zelensky to physically be here in the UK, physically standing in the UK, physically standing in Parliament in Downing Street too, as we expect later. I think that this is going to resonate in Russia. It will, as I said, bind the UK to Ukraine, and I think this will be sort of processed, if you like, in Moscow.
And when we see President Zelensky addressing Parliament, of course, that will be, it's a place of drama, so much political drama. That will be quite a moment for MPs to listen to someone who has come onto the world stage in such a widely, highly regarded way.
I think that's absolutely right. He has addressed Parliament remotely, so via a video link last year, and of course it is something that again brings together MPs from all political parties, and I can imagine it would be quite a sort of solemn occasion in a way to hear a message from President Zelensky. But I think he is held in very high regard here in Westminster, and a chance for Parliament to really sort of sit and contemplate exactly what he has been dealing with for this last year since the Russian invasion, and just how he has managed. And I think some achievement that he will be here this many months on, physically in the UK, standing there in person, having made the visit, obviously shrouded in intensely tight security to actually get here. But I think that will be recognised as well as an achievement that he has managed to keep Ukraine going this far in order to be able to keep that message of hope and positivity and the challenge to Russia. And I think receiving that in person in Parliament will be hugely significant.